Hi, welcome to the world of cartooning. Our guest today can be described as the greatest editorial cartoonist I know. He is eternally young, he's eternally angry, he still is excited about his craft, and his cartoons have been viewed as some of the best in America. If you had a group of editorial cartoonists, and you said within this group there are 3 Pulitzer Prize winners, there's 5 Sigma Delta Chi Award winners, there's 2 Overseas Press Award winners, you would just be talking about our guest all by himself. You wouldn't need anybody else. I'm talking about the one, the only Paul Conrad with the LA Times. Paul, thank you so much for being here. This is such a treat.
Thanks for asking, Mike.
Listen, whenever I think of you, whenever I think of Paul Conrad, I see you kind of coming downstairs early in the morning in your pajamas or something, and you walk up to the front door, and you open it up, and you look down at the Los Angeles Times on your front mat, and you look at the front page, the main headline, and you say, "Those SOBs," and then you run back to your drawing board and you start drawing. Is that your secret? Are you always angry?
Always.
Always.
You can't help but be angry if you read the paper each morning. And that's a problem today. That's not my sequence, though. I go to the front door in my pajamas and I send my golden retriever down to get the paper. And some days he has to make 3 and 4 trips.
And so sometimes he gets angry.
That
he says,
dog!
"Those SOBs!"
That dog comes back and growls at me. He says, "Hey, God, here, what upsets you so?" He points at this headline, and away we go.
Well, a lot of cartoonists get criticism for always being againers. Always.
They're doing their
against
job. By nature, the use of satire, that's it. You are against a given proposition, well, you name it, issue, and that's the job of the cartoonist.
In a lot of your cartoons, though, there's so much more to it than just being against something. I get an underlying feeling from a lot of things you do that you, I don't know, maybe believe that this is your country and this is your flag. You're defending these things. And is that true?
Absolutely. I'm a patriot. I just don't want the glories of this country taken away by a bunch of men who really don't understand what they're doing, that have their own ends and are trying to turn the country around in this, what we call now the second revolution, I think it's been tagged by our present president. And I'm sorry, but it's my country too, and I hope the voters one day, I hope that they would see through it in the last election, but he won big. So now he's going to carry out that mandate.
Yeah. Now, where did that patriotism come from?
I don't know. I spent 3.5 years in the Army, and not the best soldier. I never rose above PFC. But the PFC's won the war, you see, the good war. And I don't know where the officers were at the time, but we were busy winning the war. You know how that is.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I know. I was in the mediocre war.
The police action.
The police action.
Yes, yes.
Well, were your parents active, or were they politically active?
Not really. My father was a right-winger, that I know. But in spite of that, a good guy, very good guy. Great guy. He could have been a marvelous artist in his own right, but in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, where he grew up, there wasn't room for Grant Wood, let alone Bob Conrad. So, in fact, artists at that point, in the 20s and 30s, what did they do? So he went to work for a railroad, the Milwaukee Railroad, a mighty fine line.
And that's one of the reasons why you started drawing.
Yeah. Yeah, he'd bring these rate changes home. They were on 8 by 11, whatever paper it is. And the backsides were always blank, so my twin brother and I'd just sit and draw, sit on the floor, and draw. And we could do trains at 6. We go watch the trains come in at night, you know, that kind of thing.
Oh, gosh. And you said that your father was a conservative?
Arch,
Arch conservative?
you bet.
Was he?
One of his heroes was Father Charles Coughlin.
Okay, now Coughlin was like
Falwell.
a Falwell, or maybe a Huey Long for those who can remember.
Falwell in a Roman collar.
Gosh.
Yeah, had there been television, he would have been a very big man. Of course he was then. But finally the bishops or cardinals or somebody in the hierarchy finally shut him up. It's about time too.
Was your father alive when you were doing cartoons, when you were doing editorial cartoons?
Oh yeah. And he liked them. I know he did. He just didn't agree with them.
He would say, Conrad!
Conrad, get off it! Sometimes he'd sound like my editor. You see.
Oh, gosh. Now, you and your brother were both cartoonists at a young age.
Yeah. Well, Jim is more an illustrator. And I don't illustrate. I draw. Sometimes the stuff verges on the illustrating concept. I have one running shortly with a beautiful spider web. Could I draw it for
Oh,
you?
I think so, Paul.
You need
That's
all the
why
help
we're
you can
sitting
get
at
on it.
drawing boards here.
Say, oh, I knew there was a reason. And if you study spider webs, they are very intricately done. Beautiful work. And if you know, they all have, you know, the veins into the middle. And then it seems that they almost go out like so. There's your, and then right off here hanging up is a spider with RR on the back. And this spider is waiting. By the way, spiders have 8 legs. I learned that the hard way. And the line on this is safety net.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's more fun. But now that's illustrating, but yet it's got a point.
Sure.
You see? And finally, there will be little, you know the way they wrap them up in the web? Well, I may use this a couple or 3 times as one piece of social legislation after another gets wrapped. Include them.
That's fabulous.
Sure. But that's what that safety net's all about, you see. The homeless, this kind of thing.
You once told me that caring about a subject is almost as important as the ability to draw.
Well, I think it's more important than you care. Because if you really care about an issue and are concerned enough about it, I mean it, a person who had never lifted a pen in his life could do it, if it's a good issue. I've seen bad ideas, and if I've done it myself, I've tried to draw it and to really make it into a good idea through the drawing. Impossible. But you'll never see a good idea hurt by the drawing, ever. If it's a good idea, it works.
Now, tell me about your workday. I mean, you said that you do get up and you do go down and get your dog to get the newspaper.
Yeah, after Barney brings the paper in, then we can get mad together.
All right.
And I read the paper at home, and then unfortunately I can't work at home. So I drive in every day to the LA Times. And I'm birthed in with the editorial writers. They do their thing, and I do mine. I've attended one editorial conference, and that was the first day I arrived at the LA Times.
No kidding.
Yeah, I don't go.
See, a lot of cartoonists are kind of forced to go in.
Well, if they can get something out of it, that's fine. They should. But I don't.
That's really interesting.
Well, they're talking in another dimension. I'm thinking, I've got all the background up here when I'm reading the paper, the headlines, and then going into the in-depth pieces. And you read and read and read, and all of a sudden you really aren't reading anymore. You're visualizing what you're going to draw and who's going to get it tomorrow.
But one of the stories that we tell about you is are about your battles with editors, and that's legend. That's wonderful. You're a
I have had battles, and I think you have to choose where you're going to go to the mat, which cartoon you're going to go to the mat for. And I've tried to do that and lucked out, I think.
Often cartoonists are afraid to question authority. If the editor says, no, that cartoon is not a good cartoon, they will not fight with the editor.
You have to fight.
Yeah.
I mean, being critical is one thing. Here's a cartoonist criticizing the President of the United States. Certainly they're adversaries. They should be. They have to be. And this nonsense about trying to get something through. You know, it's tough enough to get an idea, to draw it, all the rest, and then have to be a salesman to get it by an editor. I just think that's bananas.
Sure, sure. Now,
But they're human too, you see.
yeah. Now, you don't have any censorship.
I do. The thing has to be in good taste and make sense. And if it happens to work in both areas, it runs, which is fine. I think that's the only clamps that should be put on a cartoonist. I'm not on the editorial page. I'm on the op page.
Well,
And for some time we ran, when Reagan was governor of California, we ran what was called the Reagan disclaimer. And it stated above the editorials, and I was over next to it, that the opinions of the Times were stated below and not in a cartoon or anything else. And there was always confusion. So they moved me off, and now we're getting far more letters, better letters, all the rest of it, and we've done away a long time ago with the Reagan disclaimer.
do you put your letters into water before you open them? I mean, do you get kind of
I get an awful
dangerous
lot of
then?
mail,
Sure. And
for and against.
oh, really?
Mostly against.
No kidding.
I have to say that. But we have had some funny mail come in. One, in fact, was a package, I would say, well, 2 feet long, about 4 inches high, and roughly a foot wide. Poorly wrapped and this sort of thing. And they brought it in, put it on my desk, and I asked, what are you going to do with this? And I said, get it out of here. Because you can't tell what you're going to get these days. And finally it went back to the mail room, and they wouldn't touch it. So it looked suspicious, and they called the bomb squad, and the bomb squad came over, and yeah, we should do something with it. So we cleared out one area of the Times parking lot, and they came in with their, you know, the razor blade on the end of a long pole, and they're cutting. And they reached metal, sure enough. So they said, well, we've got to detonate it. So they did. And the explosion, and then there was dog feces all over the walls, the ceilings, you name it.
Oh, Paul!
It was so funny.
Oh, that is a stitch.
Yeah, I've received horse manure, you know, this kind
Oh
of
my
thing.
gosh!
It's all in a day's work, Mike.
Isn't that exciting, though? I mean, really, that's kind of dangerous, though.
Not really, no.
Jeez.
No. But I take all my calls that come in, and I think I should, because I have the forum, and the people calling don't have a forum. So I think that I should, you know, at least listen to them. And it's marvelous, you know, some of the arguments you get.
You know, you've drawn so many presidents, and in fact, two of our greatest presidents for us cartoonists, our hometown boys for you. That was Nixon and Reagan.
Yeah, I'd like to point that out. In fact, some way I want to do it cartoon way, that the gift to the United States from California has been Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and Herbert Hoover.
Oh, I didn't know Hoover came from California.
Oh, sure, he's an Iowa boy, you know.
Oh, no kidding.
But well, he helped build Stanford.
Oh my gosh. Do you think you could draw one of those guys? I mean,
One of them?
yeah, just one.
Which one?
Well, whoever's your favorite.
Well, right now the reigning favorite, you know, would be his nibs. Now you see, I'm not sure that all his drawing is necessary. May I say that?
Yes.
because cartoons really, the drawing is the least of it. Can you tell who that is yet, Mike? You can't
kidding.
see it from there, Mike.
Oh, I can see it. I'm looking.
Can you?
Looking at it.
Okay. And then the squinty eyes. This is a simple nose. And, of course, the cheeks, which I noticed the other day at the press conference, were they seem to be red all the way down here. Did you notice that?
Yes. And he says he never wears makeup.
He never wears makeup.
Oh, no. I mean, you did a classic cartoon on that.
Well, I was just carrying out what he said, you see.
What was the cartoon?
Well, Reagan in clown makeup. What it was this, the red nose, and then the mouth, and then the eyes. They always have this, and then, of course, you know, making the clown look, and then the collar. And he's saying, I've never worn makeup. Maybe he was born like this. I don't know.
You've also had the distinction of probably being sued more than any other cartoonist I know. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a tribute. That's like a medal or something when a cartoonist is sued.
Well, not really. I could go through my entire life and never have, never get sued again, I would hope.
No, except though you want people to be mad at you. I mean, you want people to be irate by the cartoon you do, though. And it's a nice thing to be sued, having somebody, some politician or something.
Well, thank heaven somebody cares enough to sue.
Yeah.
But honest to God, the former Mayor Yorty sued for $6 million. That was just sick. There was no way could he win. It was simple harassment, I thought.
See.
But then Union Oil sued for $4 million. And that was serious. We went, by the way, all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court. They said, go back to L.A. and have a trial, which we did. And that's murder. Yeah. It went on for about 3 weeks.
No kidding.
3 weeks. And I'd run up the hill to the courts, do my stint, and then they'd take breaks all the time in courts, as you know. And then I'd draw, and then run back up the hill, get on the stand, the rest of it. Just sick.
Do you remember the two cartoons that you were sued over?
Well, one was do you want me to describe the
Sure.
things? The one on Yorty, Mayor Yorty, he had served 2 years on the House Defense Subcommittee of some kind. Mm-hmm. That's another thing. It always drives me crazy. We call this money we spend on war a defense posture. Mm-hmm. Defense. 84, we're here. So he figured with the Nixon being elected and Nixon picking his cabinet, when would that have been, 68? He's on the phone and he's saying, and then here are 4 guys walking in white suits and one has a straitjacket behind him. And Yorty is saying, I have to go now. I've been appointed Secretary of Defense and the Secret Service men are here.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And my editor, in fact, the editor of the paper said, Con, and this is after we get the notice he's going to sue. And so he said, Con, is there anything, Nick was most beautiful man I've known. And he said, Con, is there any way you could do a cartoon that'll kind of take the heat off of that one? Mm-hmm. I said, well, I'll try, Nick. This is silly, but I'll try. So I just cut the same cartoon out, pasted it on a hunk of paper, and put a new line on it. And Yorty is saying, I've got to go now. The LA Times lawyers are here with Conrad's retraction. That didn't run.
Oh, geez.
But you have a lot of fun with that sort of thing.
Paul, I thought the cartoon that you were sued over was the one where you had all the trees when Yorty was running for president. And he went to New Hampshire to be in the primaries there, and you had all the trees, all the maple trees, and then it had all these buckets on the side with Yorty for president. And the caption was,
"The sap is running in the state of New Hampshire." Well, no,
Fabulous cartoon.
Well, there's no way he
Fabulous
could
cartoon.
sue on that. But I looked up sap, and that means that he's kind of a wimp, which fit exactly.
Jeez, that is so great. You're a feminist. You've been pro ERA. You're the darling of the ACLU, I would say.
Well, I hope so.
And you're also against any kind of abortions.
True.
How does that read with your followers?
Well, the followers are kind of beside the point. I have to live with me. And to be, I'm sorry that I have to agree with Ronald Reagan on one point, but I gladly do. He's stuck with the same problem I am, although he signed the abortion bill in California.
No, I didn't know that.
1967. July 17th, I think is the date. And believe me, without him, if he had let that bill go, I know if he had vetoed it, they couldn't have overridden me. No way, because they didn't have the vote. If he had let that bill go, it never would have become virtually the law of the land because of all the other states adopting it. But now he says he's sorry about that. But I am stuck with the same problem. I don't know when life begins. And if I don't know when life begins, then I don't have the right to make a judgment that I can take a life if I'm not sure it's there, or is there, or what. I just don't know.
It must be weird, though, Paul, when a Phyllis Schlafly or somebody like that calls you and says, "Man, I love this cartoon. Can I have it?" or something. I mean, do you ever have that?
No, I don't hear from those people.
Oh, really? Oh,
No.
really?
No, the Falwells and the rest of them, they don't like me.
Do you ever hear from any of your victims?
Barry Goldwater, for one. In fact, he and I think are good friends. I hope we are. I like him very much. No, I don't hear from him. I've only, I heard indirectly from Richard Nixon. I appeared on his enemies list.
Oh.
And was audited 5 years in a row, come up with everything, which we wanted. They had the case.
And in fact, you've got an award from Whittier College. What was that?
Well, it was a fellowship, I believe it's called, the Nixon Chair. And he funded it to the tune of about $500.
Oh, gee, that's
Of course, it pays a whole lot more than that. So I went out and gave 5 lectures, and now I have the Nixon Chair.
That is fabulous. What wonderful irony. Now, as well as doing the cartoons, you seem to get great satisfaction out of doing sculptures.
Oh,
And
yeah.
the sculptures are fabulous. How did you get into that?
Well, I got into it because I was going to do Nixon. Again, this goes back to '78. And I was looking for a 14 by 14 inch piece of wood, 8 feet tall. And I was going to carve Nixon in, and just imagine this. That's roughly what you get. And he'd be standing there like so, with his head here and his nose, he's looking at you, see, like this. Can you see this, Mike?
Yes, I'm watching.
Just so you can see.
I'm watching. Now, you were carving this?
Yeah, I wanted to carve that out of wood. In fact, my wife bought me a chainsaw, and I was going to rough cut the thing and then start carving the thing.
Paul, the size of that was how big?
14 inches by 14 inches by 8 feet tall.
8 feet tall.
Sure.
I thought you were just talking in inches. I didn't know.
And
Jeez.
this is the way he'd be. And then leave some room here on the bottom just for a foot or so. Well, I couldn't find a 14 by 14 piece. You can't do it 8 feet tall. The last person I asked, the thing to do, Con, is go into the forest, cut down a tree, let it sit for 2 years, I think was the term, and then go cut it up and make
You
your
and James
Nixon.
Watt. I mean, you can go in
Sure.
there together.
Yeah, I thought, well, I had Jim cutting the wood for me. And so I said, I can't do that. You know, I can't get the material. So my wife Kay suggested, why don't you do it in bronze? Well, I went to the library. I had no idea how to work in bronze. And I worked in wax and all this. I set up an armature and all that. And did Nixon. I've got 2 left, 2 out of 24, and really he's good.
And then how many others have you done?
Oh, I've done about 15 others. I just finished Martin Luther King as he's holding a chain which is broken, and it comes down, and he's a blacksmith. The hammer is on the anvil and the rest of it, and it's just called Free at Last, Free at Last.
Oh,
It's kind of nice.
and then you did something else with the chain too.
Oh, the chain reaction.
Yeah.
Well,
show me that.
I'm trying to find someone who realizes the potential of this thing.
Yeah.
And it's an atomic explosion. Got the mushroom up here, and wind shear, of course, in the thing. Powerful thing. Well, if you do it all in chain, and I've got a 3-foot model of this, done in chain. I've got about $150 worth of chain stuck on this thing. I did it in wax, and then would heat the wax and put the chain on. And you just keep packing the chain. Now, the 25-footer, it'll all be arced together, all the chain. And the marvelous thing is, I was out working on it at the foundry, and another sculptor was there, and he said, "Hey, have you thought of putting an opaque white light up there? Orange light, something like that?" And I said, "Sir, Tony, I didn't until right now."
Paul, you are so fun. I cannot believe that this half hour is up already, Paul.
Oh, Michael, not again.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you,
being a
Michael.
guest. And thank you for joining us. And please join us again on this wonderful world of cartooning. I'm Mike Peters.